Yard waste. If you can believe it, that's what may have put Texas Senator, or rather Kentucky Senator Rand Paul in the hospital this weekend after he was attacked at his own home by his next-door neighbor. According to another neighbor, these two men have had a long-standing feud over leaves and grass clippings that blow onto each other's lawns. And we're not sure if that's really what led to the attack. But Senator Paul's neighbor, Rene Boucher, admitted to coming over on Friday and tackling the senator to the ground. Republican senator suffering from bruised lungs and 5 rib fractures, 3 of those rib fractures so serious they're displaced. And state troopers are calling this an intentional assault. But the lawyer for that neighbor insists this is just a dispute between neighbors, albeit one that got right out of hand.
It was absolutely not planned out beforehand. I've seen a couple of media spots that would tend to suggest that it was politically motivated. That is absolutely and unequivocally untrue. It's just a very, very hugely regrettable incident that would not happen again in a million years.
Rene Boucher is out on bond tonight, but he's facing 4th-degree assault charges at the state level. But that's state. And don't forget, this was a senator, so more charges could be on the way, federal charges. And they're mighty serious, because assaulting a member of Congress is a federal crime. CNN investigative correspondent Drew Griffin joins me live now from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Okay, Drew, when I first heard this, I thought there's something bigger here. And it doesn't sound like it's lawn clippings, but that's the official word. Is there anything else coming out other than that official word?
Well, let's just dial that back, because it's really not the official word. The official word is we don't know what the motive is, and there's lots of investigations still going on, both at the state level. And as you said, the federal agents, the FBI, looking into this, not exactly an investigation according to the FBI public affairs officer that we talked to in Louisville. They're just looking into this. One guy's a Democrat, Boucher, the other guy conservative Republican. So immediately everybody thought this must be over politics, but no, we're hearing from a neighbor, long-standing dispute over yard waste. This happened apparently while Senator Rand Paul was cutting his lawn on a riding lawnmower, which he does like to do. So at this point, it looks like it is a neighbor dispute between neighbors who've lived next to each other for 17 years, Ashley. And as Rene Boucher's attorney says, it does not involve politics. That doesn't mean this is not going to be serious. The fact that these injuries are so serious, 5 broken ribs, it could bring these charges up to felony charges, but right now it's a misdemeanor crime here in Kentucky. Ashley.
So, and the other issue is right now where it stands at the state level, it's a 4th-degree assault. And usually that's, you get a cut or a bruise in a bar fight. But when you get a fractured rib that's displaced, that can kill you. That can puncture a lung, and those are serious injuries. And as I understand it, and you'll have to, drive the bus here, Drew, they didn't know how serious Senator Paul's injuries were when they leveled that 4th-degree assault charge, right?
That's absolutely correct, and now they're going back and taking a look at it. And from my understanding, the troopers that are investigating this will actually look at Senator Rand Paul's health records when it comes to this matter and determine, and perhaps it'll be up for the county district attorney, the Commonwealth attorney here, the state's attorney, who will look at the actual injuries and determine, is this really a 4th-degree assault, or is this something that raises to a felonious level within the state of Kentucky? The other matter that you alluded to is whether or not there was any kind of politics behind this. If that comes into play, then this could also become a federal matter.
Okay, Drew, don't go anywhere. You mentioned the troopers, so I want to bring in the troopers. Master Trooper Jeremy Hodges is with the Kentucky State Police, and he joins me live as well from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Trooper Hodges, maybe you can shed some light here. Where are we in this investigation, and where do we stand with the charges? Are we still at 4th-degree assault? Are you conferring with the feds? Help me understand where you are.
Yes, ma'am. What we're doing now is the arresting officer, or in this case, which is also the investigating officer, once he completes his his report, and we're probably waiting on some medical records. Once he completes that report, he will then forward that to our Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. Kentucky is a Commonwealth state, which means that we have prosecutors for both misdemeanor and felony cases. So in this case, it will go to the Warren County Commonwealth's attorney for his review. Then, when we originally responded to Mr. Paul's residence, he had refused medical treatment by EMS while on scene, and there was an apparent minor injury to him. It has since been released by the spokesperson of Senator Paul that he did sustain some rib fractures.
Wow, he refused medical treatment at first. Maybe that's, you know, because of his stature, and he knew full well that would bring an undue amount of attention. He must have been suffering immensely with 5 fractured ribs, 3 of them displaced. He's the person who called 911, correct?
That's correct, Ashley. And another thing that we have to take into consideration here is, you know, a lot of times if we can compare this to a car wreck, maybe a day or two down the road, you notice injuries. You know, you're sore the next day, whereas when your adrenaline's flowing, when the incident's happening, maybe you don't realize it at first.
Can I ask you this, Trooper? The $7,500 bond was posted, which means, you know, Mr. Boucher gets to go home, but home is next door. And typically there's some conditions of posting bail, and you can't go around the alleged victim. So what are the conditions? These two live next to each other, and this was really serious.
Well, that'll be more of a question for a pretrial officer or a judge, but you're right. They do have some stipulations on his bond agreement. Sometimes that's no contact or communication with the complainant. Sometimes it's no further acts of violence or abuse toward him. And like you said, sometimes it is a stay-away order, you know, not to be within 500 feet, not to be within 1,000 feet of the alleged victim. So there are some parameters and some conditions of his bond that if he was to violate those, then he would be arrested there.
So I'm going to ask you an opinion question, which is always dangerous when speaking to a law enforcement officer like yourself, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is an unusual case. Do you expect, Trooper, that this is going to remain a state case, or do you think that this is going to involve some kind of a, say, political dispute that might rise to the level of a federal charge? And it might not even need the political dispute. It may just be a federal charge, and which means, as I understand it, it is no longer a state charge. Where do you read this?
Well, and that's one reason the FBI was contacted. They have their own policy and procedures in place that they have to conduct a separate investigation. So we're working cooperatively with the FBI just to make sure that this was not 100% not politically motivated.
Okay. Don't go anywhere because I want to bring in yet another sort of perspective on all of this. Art Roderick is the former assistant director of the U.S. Marshals Service. He's also a CNN law enforcement analyst, and he's joining me on the set as well with Bob Shull, who's a former prosecutor. So what a trove of smart people I'm going to be able to mine here. Art, first to you. Do you see this as a federal case, even if, say, politics weren't involved and these are two guys who've been at each other's, necks over grass clippings? But he's a senator.
Right. It could very well end up in the federal arena, regardless of what occurs here, what the motive was.
Politics or not?
Politics or not. I mean, I think here, I've actually been called on by the Capitol Police on occasion to provide protection to a senator when they didn't have the staffing or personnel to handle that type of protection detail. And I think the key part here is this the first time the Capitol Police have ever heard of this type of incident going on between these two neighbors?
So if there's some history that the Capitol Police have had to dig into before between the two,
correct.
What does that mean for Boucher?
Well, to me, I think that would move it up another notch to possibly becoming a federal type investigation here with the FBI and Capitol Police.
Okay, so Bob Shull, as the prosecutor in the room right now, if this becomes a federal case, how different is that for this neighbor in terms of what he could face than if it stays at the state level as that probably not 4th-degree assault, but something a little more serious?
You're talking federal sentencing guidelines being thrown into the mix, the possibility of...
How much time behind bars?
You could maximum of 20 years, something to that effect. But we're assuming he has no prior criminal history. They'll be able to put a good sentencing memorandum together. If this is truly about grass trimmings, it's probably not going to the federal arena. But if it's not, we don't know if he has Facebook posts, social media kills people.
Who cares what it's about when someone has 5 broken ribs?
True, but if you also look at the corresponding state statutes, he's charged with assault in the 4th degree, which is only a misdemeanor at this point in time. Probation, community service, whatever. But they would need to prove that there was a weapon used to inflict these injuries.
Right.
To ratchet it up to the felony levels.
Or the personal injury results, and that's up to 10 years. And, you know, we're going to wait, like the trooper said, lots of reports need to come in so that we assess exactly where these injuries are and what they decide to do. But I think I'm going to be asking you some more questions about this as we watch. Thank you to both you and Art. Nice to see you as usual.